Well, just when you thought maybe Agenda 2030 was dead in the water, not so fast. In fact, maybe stronger than ever. Agenda 2030 may go down as one of the most sweeping and dramatic attempts to reshape human life in modern history. We're not talking about a few minor policy changes around the edges. We're talking about a full-scale transformation of how people live, how people eat, how people travel, work, own property, ultimately how populations are managed and controlled. Is the Iran war like a major piece of this new control grid? It's hard to say. Well, the most important part of this is that it's not some far-off plan sitting on a shelf somewhere. It's already underway massively. Much more of it is still coming, so buckle up. For those who may not already know, Agenda 2030 was rolled out by the United Nations in 2015, presented as a coordinated global mission to tackle issues like poverty and hunger. That's how they presented it to us, while also promoting good health, right? Don't eat meat. Eat fake plant-based garbage. Get quality education. Who's telling us like what quality education? Like who's going to provide that education? Really? Equality, right? It's all about equality, DEI, a whole list of other like lofty utopian sounding goals. One world government, essentially. But despite the sweeping promises that were made at the start, the evidence that has emerged since then has led many people to believe it's already done far more to advance what some are calling the New World Order and the broader goals of globalist control than to deliver the peace and prosperity that it was supposed to bring in. And over the past several years, more and more details about what critics believe is the real agenda have continued to surface. The push towards a one world government. The end of private property. They don't want you to own anything, right? You'll own nothing. And they love that. Everything is moving to digital, so you don't own any sort of physical media. You won't own property anymore. Then you have the rise of the 15-minute cities, which is happening in real time, designed in a way that many fear would make populations easier to monitor, to manage, to control. We've already seen these 15-minute cities rolling out in England. We've covered it on our show. And even signs pointing to what some believe is a full-scale depopulation program.
And welcome back to We Are the People. This is your host, Jason Preston. And today I am very excited. We've got some incredible people that we've brought on to have what I believe is an extremely important conversation. It's important enough that we've actually spent weeks and hours preparing for this particular show. What we're going to be talking about is something that may not seem tied to a lot of the things we've been talking about in the past, especially, the abuse. But I think you will actually find it actually is all deeply related. As today we're going to be talking about the United Nations. We've brought them up many times in the past, and one of the things people sometimes ask the comments, well, what's the problem with the United Nations? They do a lot of good, and why should we be concerned about how much funding that comes out of this state towards them and how involved they are in this state? And so today we're going to be bringing a panel of, honestly, I think some of the best experts probably in the world to talk about this topic, and not just about the United Nations and some of their agendas and how they are antithetical to freedom, but also how they are being implemented in our backyard. We've talked about Utah being ground zero, and I believe this is a very important issue. And I also think as we talk about this conversation that it's important to kind of think about, the corruption we are fighting. We look at, corruption with our leaders here in Utah. We look at corruptions even in different churches. We look at corruption at the presidential level and in Israel. But the reality is, at the top of all the corruption, if you look at it, is almost a pyramid, is this all-seeing eye. And underneath that, it all flows in the same agenda. When you understand that all these agendas ultimately serve the same ends, which is the taking away of our freedoms, and it is moving us towards what I believe is biblical times. And I think what you're going to see today by these experts is that the United Nations is playing a very big role in moving us into those times. And here's the cool thing: the reason I'm excited to have this conversation is, while Utah seems to be in the center of everything, and all of our resources are in the middle of it, I believe we also are in an incredible position to also stand against it. And I believe that's why we're here. So with that being said, I'd like to go ahead and have our panel of experts introduce themselves. And again, these are all incredible people. We've got, I'll list all their names and I'll have them each to give a quick introduction, but we've got Carolina Allen. Carolina, awesome to have you. She's been at the UN many times. She'll introduce herself a little bit more. We've got True Ott. He's been on the show before. True, glad to have you back.
My pleasure.
We've got Jen Dredge calling in. She's called in before. I mean, no one understands the corruption and the legislation, how it's being implemented in our backyard like Jen. So we're honestly just honored to have her. And Lisa, as you're going to see, worldwide. I mean, she is, some of the stuff she's exposed has gone absolutely viral because she has dug into the research and showed things that are just, the world has just been amazed at what's going on. So let's just do some quick introductions, then let's jump into it. Carolina?
So my name's Carolina Allen, and I'm the founder and president of an international women's leadership nonprofit called Big Ocean Women. And we are very present in international forums, and we promote faith, family, and motherhood at all different levels of civil society. And we believe that those things can really, that's what's making the most sustainable kind of change in the world. So
Awesome. Thank you. True?
Yeah, thanks, Jason. My name's True Ott. I've been a guest on this show a few times. Thank you for that, Jason. But yeah, today is so critical and so important. My background is from investigative journalism. For over 38 years, I did the radio show Story Behind the Story. And much of what I'm going to present now is just tying it all together. Things I reported back in the 1990s and coming to fruition as we watch it. And it does involve the United Nations, but also the center point here in Utah. So thanks for having me.
Thank you, True. Jen?
Yeah, just local Utah. I just do a lot of research and read a lot of bills. So that's it. That's what I do.
Yeah, she's amazing. We love her. Lisa?
Yeah, I'm Lisa Logan. I'm an independent journalist and researcher. I've written all sorts of articles and done interviews about the agenda to change our culture and behavior for the past 5 years.
Yeah, and she's done a phenomenal job. So, honestly, I think you guys are going to find you're in for an absolute treat. Just the wealth of information and what is happening in our backyard, things that the media should be exposing that they're not. So, Carolina, let's start with this. Would you mind giving just an overview of what we're going to be discussing today?
yeah, I'm happy to do it. So the discussion we're having today can be really tricky for most people. I mean, it's hard for us that have been doing this for a long time to get it figured out. And I feel like I've been looking at this for, over 10 years, and I'm just now, I've come up with a framework that I think is going to help guide our discussion, and that hopefully you listeners at home and viewers at home can, use it kind of like a filing cabinet, so you can kind of sort all of the different components out so that it's not a big tangled web. So what you're looking at right now is what we call our UN Master Agenda Framework. And it's a way to understand something that is incredibly complex. And when you hear terms like the United Nations, global agendas, sustainable development, all of it can feel super distant and far away and abstract. But honestly, it really does connect to our everyday life. It's meant to connect to us at home. Most people don't have the time or the desire to dig through all of these thick policy documents and international agreements and institutionalized language. It's just too much. But these systems are shaping every level of society, from our schools to our communities to how, neighborhoods are structured, and even within our own homes. So the purpose of this show today is for us to simplify this framework. So all of us have taken different components, what I call modules, from this framework, and we are going to make it accessible to you. And this graphic, feel free to use it. It is, from Big Ocean Women, so you can feel free to use that and learn from it, share it with your families. So we're going to walk through it today. So the very first module, it lays the groundwork for everything. So that's what we call the social agenda. And it goes from anything from language to education to behavior modification and even religion, like how the United Nations is identifying and working with religion. So then we move past that, and then we get into the infrastructural agenda, which explores all of the treaties, okay, that bind the cities, and the digital IDs and the financial component of everything. And then after that, we move on to the next layer. And if you can almost think of it like we're getting deeper into this cavernous hole, it kind of starts on the surface, and then you start to incrementally get down to what the real nature of the beast is. And then when you bring the technological module, the third layer, into it, we're talking about AI, we're talking about global data and interoperating systems, we're talking about biotech, and then neurobehavioral techniques that are being widely used. And then the very, very last layer is the transhumanist agenda. And so that is something that is really up and coming. And if people are keeping tabs on any of this stuff, they can see it. They can see where this train is headed. It's headed towards transhumanism. And that's when we talk about AI integration, human augmentation, and then even the transhumanist ethics. And so I have everything the framework is in force. When you get to the very last one, I have a big question mark there. Because what I want is for viewers to decide for themselves where they think this leads. It's not our job to tell you. I think that I know where it leads, but I want you to think for yourself, where does this lead? And so True is going to be talking about that module, and that's the framework. That's what we're going to do. So Lisa's going to be talking about the social agenda. Jen's going to talk about the infrastructural agenda. I will cover the technological agenda, and then True will cover the transhumanist agenda.
Awesome. And as she said, we will put links and references in the show notes. We want you to feel confident to go and do your own research. That's the way we win. We win by being educated. And when we sat about, again, several meetings, how do we get in a short hour and a half, downloads to the public? How do we really help them get their hands around this? It's almost impossible. But what we do hope is to help you get at least an idea of what is going on and give you the resources to go in and learn yourself so that you can help wake people up, because that's how we stop it. So with that being said, Lisa, take it away.
Well, I thank you for having me, Jason. I wanted to start by just talking about the difference between America and Western culture and the Eastern culture and spirituality. And there's a huge divide there. And the reason it's important is because how do we pass down our culture? A lot of that is done from parent to child in the family atmosphere. And the whole idea of passing down this culture is an anathema to the United Nations because their worldview is very different than the Western worldview. So Americans passing down their ideas of freedom and liberty and individuality, this is a problem. So there had to have been a way to stop. How do we stop that transference of parents being able to raise their children with the values and beliefs of a Western Christian religious culture? So you cannot talk about this without talking about the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, which is UNESCO. And you might remember this from the news. Trump recently just pulled us entirely out of that organization once again, after we spent billions of dollars to get back in during the Biden administration. And you ask, why is this a problem? As the name says, it influenced that ability to further this Western individualist culture by disrupting education and science, and they should have added an R to it to be UNESCO, but also religion. So you'll see on this slide here, man is influenced by his family, which is influenced by both religion, individual rights and freedoms, and that's the whole idea behind that is individual rights and freedoms are given by God, protected by the Constitution, and cannot be infringed upon. So that's your representative government in the West. And then, of course, family, and the whole idea of it is the smallest form of government. It's heavily influenced by individualistic beliefs of the culture and often the individualistic religious values of both Judaism and Christianity, two of the major religions of the United States of America. And when they talk about disrupting that whole idea of families passing down their culture, you have to understand what they are trying to do is influence our culture and our youth to have a particular worldview. And a lot of times my friends describe this as oneness versus two-ness. Are you one with God as to like you can be on the same plane as God? Are you separate from God and the universe? Like, did God create you as a unique creature with its own values and rights that are protected or should be protected by the government? And this is the difference between the worldview that the United Nations is trying to get, which is a very collectivist worldview, where you'll hear later True Ott talk about the WHO's One Health agenda and this whole idea that they want to say that man is not separate from the ecosphere, the atmosphere, the animals, the dirt, everything in the universe. They're saying that we're all interconnected and interdependent. But when you put man on the same plane as all of those things, you then start to say, well, man, you're going to have to sacrifice your rights and freedoms for the good of the collective, everything that's on that same plane. And so this is what they're trying to change the worldview to be. And that's what they call a panentheistic or pantheistic worldview versus a theistic worldview, which is God is separate than man. And the way that they mainly want to do that is through education. Now, this, scarily, is a real cover of a magazine that UNESCO puts out called The Blue Dot. And in the picture, you'll see a boy, for you audio listeners, a small boy. He's got a little opening right here on the side of his head, and someone else is inserting an SD card into their head. And that SD card says critical inquiry, mindfulness, empathy, and compassion. And on the front of that publication, it says rewiring the brain to be future ready. So when we talk about the social agenda, including language, let's talk about those 4 words and what they actually mean. Critical inquiry means creating a critical view of individuality and national sovereignty. And what they do in classrooms is they pit this as being selfish. You are selfish if you want to maintain your individual rights and freedoms or your national sovereignty, because the UN believes in global sovereignty. Mindfulness. They mean by that you need to be mindful of one's interconnectedness and interdependence with the rest of humanity. Like I just said, everything's on the same plane and all is one. Empathy. Caring for others is actually weaponized in this way of teaching and used to manipulate one into giving up your individual rights for the good of the quote-unquote whole that you're a part of. And compassion. They often talk about this in schools as they teach social emotional learning as empathy in action. And that's social emotional learning, some things I've been exposing for the last 5 years. You can visit my Substack, lisalogan.substack.com, or my YouTube, Parents of Patriots. I have lots of videos up there about social emotional learning and how it's being used to manipulate our children into this very collectivist worldview. But that social emotional learning, what it does is it says it's not enough to feel for other people, to have them tell you their experiences and you actually listen and care. You have to act. You have to become an ally. And that's what we've seen in these social emotional learning programs, specifically in Utah schools. I went and looked at one in our school district, and it was called Second Step. And Second Step was not just in our district, it was in many other districts. But our district actually voted it out of being in the curriculum because not only did it, obviously weaponize the empathy and make children have a collectivist worldview, is teaching all sorts of things about LGBTQ activism and racial activism, and it was telling them to stand up and be a change agent and to come up with a disruption plan as to how they were going to change the culture here in Utah. The other thing I want to note is that Utah talks a lot about becoming a global citizen. We are one of the only states, there's not many, that actually has that written into our college and career readiness standards. So in order for children to be college and career ready, and they have to sign off on that on their report card, they have to have a mindset of being a global citizen, not a citizen of the United States, not a citizen of their own being under the Constitution. They have to be a global citizen who cares about global issues and who's willing to sacrifice their individual national sovereignty for those things. And oftentimes that worldview we're talking about here is called cosmological monism, this whole idea again that everything's interconnected and all is one. And I just wanted to note on this slide that is the same ideology behind all of these things. Now hear me list them off. Communism and socialism, the WHO's One Health agenda, the United Nations SDGs, the World Economic Forum stakeholder capitalism, the One World Religion agenda, the global consciousness movement, the environmental movement, the global governance agenda, the transgender agenda, the transhumanist agenda, and the digital ID and social credit system agenda. Because really, it's been many decades since the United Nations and UNESCO was created in the late 1940s. But there are two ways that they are going to get this mindset into people. Coercion, so radio, advertising, television, social media. In the 60s, they inserted the drug culture because when you are on LSD, you feel connected to the earth and everybody in it. And the sexual culture, too, of the 60s. Again, we just mentioned global education and social emotional learning in schools, inserting Eastern spirituality and its worldview into American and Western culture. So we're talking about yoga, mindfulness, New Age practices and thought. And then also following under coercion, and what we heard with Epstein and the victims was that they were having weird experiments done on them at his New Mexico Zorro Ranch. So you have to question, were they trying to bioengineer how to make these quote unquote good global citizens? Maybe figuring out how to bioengineer out the selfish gene. Those are the kinds of scientists that Epstein was working with. So you have to question, was part of that trafficking part of this agenda? But if all of those things don't work, there's a last and final step. And that is, if coercion doesn't work, they're going to have to do it by force. So, and that's really where we're going in these next modules, is they have to create the infrastructure for control by making access to goods and services all controlled through a digital ID that has information on everything about you through the systems where that data can be seamlessly shared across systems. Basically, what we're seeing in China is be a good citizen or else, right? These folks have to take their QR code on their phone and they can go to a store and be like, hey, scan me in. And if their social credit score isn't up to snuff, they can't do that. They can't ride the high-speed train. They have to ride one that takes hours and hours. And so this agenda, while it seems like this far-off thing, is actually being implemented right here in Utah. We are the seat for all of those things. You're going to hear from these next speakers how so and how this is being integrated. But know that this manipulation and mind control behavior stuff is already in play in our schools through social emotional learning and otherwise. Also, one more thing is that I want to talk a little bit about the interfaith agenda. And so, and really how these manipulative conversations aren't just happening in schools. There is a way they're doing these conversations with SEL and also dialogues, and you'll hear about it in these next modules as well. Interfaith, bipartisan and transpartisan, and strategic planning sessions that they have where everyone comes and gives their voice are all being facilitated by people trained in something called the Delphi technique. They use this in social emotional learning and they use this in these meetings. And the whole point of that is to get to synthesis of ideas. It's not to everyone gets a say and then, we kind of decide on the best thing. Those facilitators are trained in crowd agitator techniques. They're trained in how to manipulate the social field in the room to get to a particular outcome. And so this is how the UN's agenda is highly being done in the state of Utah. And they really are using faith. I want to encourage you, there was a presentation given by Data Republican yesterday at the Utah Republican Women's meeting, and she specifically talked about Mormon Women for Ethical Government. And what she found by synthesizing all the research that myself and another researcher had put in a Dropbox was there is specific money going into these religions, and especially here in Utah through Mormon Women for Ethical Government, that its whole agenda is to push their, like the Soros agenda, all these other things. They're putting their leaders in place in some of these grassroots movements, and they're steering it to be a part of the color revolution that we're seeing in America right now. And Utah is a big part of that.
Awesome, Lisa. And you can see why we're so lucky to have her. She is shaping the conversations that are happening out there around the United Nations. And we'll come back at the end and have some questions where we can dig in a little bit more afterwards. But with that being said, let's go ahead and bring Jen. Jen, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Jen, tell us about the infrastructure. And I really appreciate the way Lisa broke that down. Here's what they're doing, and boom, here's how they're actually implementing in our schools, in our backyard. So the infrastructure, the digital ID, the smart cities, all these things. What does the infrastructure look like the United Nations is trying to do? What does that look like, and how is that being implemented in here in our backyard?
Yeah, so I'm going to just preface this with, because due to time, I'm going to give very brief overviews so that we can kind of get into the meat of it.
Okay.
But I would assume most people, but in case they haven't, have heard of Agenda 21. And I would say that's sort of the place to start and move from. There's plenty before that led up to this, but I'd say that's sort of the framework for what the plan was for example, the rewilding corridor system, which I'll get into in a minute, and the smart city infrastructure. But as far as Utah specifically goes, it ended up impacting the rest of the country. I'm going to start with 4 pillars, and they are from the Ocher Institute, which was a Mike Leavitt and some other people created institute, and they had 4 pillars. And one was balanced environmental progress. And when he got promoted to head of the EPA, that was named Enlibra, and all 50 states signed on to that. The second one was competency measured education. I'm not going to dig into that too much because education is not my big point here, obviously, infrastructure. But I would advise people to look at what has happened with education. And just to give you a hint of how this ties in with the smart city infrastructure, the goal is to have it all be remote or internet-wise and controlled. So it'll be standards-based and very, very controlled. Number 2, interoperability in government, or as we changed it later, digital governance. So that ties in again with what's coming and the smart city infrastructure, which is so imagine you go to court, but you're not actually going to court. You're going to have digital AI judges, digital AI, lawyers or lawyers that are using AI, which is already happening for your case, and it's causing problems, right? So we're looking at digital government. That's your digital ID, central bank, digital currency, all of that. And then his other one was genealogy and genetics, so health information. And I would just say, look back at 2020 and kind of when everybody was freaking out, rightfully so, about a possible passport, right? A vaccine passport. That would be where I would tie that into the smart city infrastructure. And so it's really important that everybody's paying attention there because of DNA changes and things like that going on in the current system. And then obviously nanotechnology, bio, all of that, which Utah has a very big bio hub. So that gives you the 4 pillars, and those are directly from our former governor, who then got pulled up into head the EPA for a few years under George Bush Jr., and then got pulled up into head Health and Human Services from 2006 to 2009 under George Bush Jr., and then Obama, 1 year with Obama. So with that said, then we move into sort of the smart city infrastructure.
That's Mike Leavitt, right? You're talking about?
Yeah, Mike Leavitt, yeah. So then we move into the smart city infrastructure that's happening. And it's been a slow boil, and so I think it's been really hard for people to see. Again, there were people who tried to warn about this, but I would advise people to go look up, like Rosa Corey and Henry Lamb and some of these people that lay it out much better than I do. And they talk about Italy and all of these other things. I just don't have the time. But with that said, there is a concerted effort to move everybody into a controlled point. So in the Wasatch Front, the last I heard was going to be Davis, Utah County, Salt Lake County, Weber, and Washington was sort of where they were going to force everybody into. So your rural's you're getting moved off of the land, or ranches, farm, further out. You're getting moved into the city centers so that it can be a controlled apparatus. They're putting up 5G, now 6G all over, which helps the infrastructure maintain its surveillance system, which we're going to go back for 1 second. In 2002, for the Olympics that Utah had, they rolled out a national surveillance system that was unlike anything that's been seen at that time because of September 11th, and they were worried about attacks on the Olympics. So just keep that in mind. That process started working through Utah already, and then many of you know we ended up at the NSA data center here later. So Utah has been a surveillance kind of hub for a long time, and it goes back even further than that. But this is they made a plan, and I think it was 2017, to do the smart state rollout and make Utah the first smart state. That was on a federal government website. I will try to send Jason that link. They have, I think they've wiped it, but anyway, it said first smart state, and they were talking about turning your highways into smart highways, which is kind of happening with Utah. We're moving in that direction. We've got a lot of flock cameras and other sources up as well that are, tracking, tracing, surveilling, all of that to keep you in a controlled environment. And then they also mentioned on there the smart city infrastructure, which again goes under the smart state. And Jason confronted talks about that. I believe it was the smart state or smart city, Jason?
Tell me your thoughts on the smart cities that you're working on. What smart cities? Smart cities. I don't know what smart city. Come join us for Sandbag when you're pointing out. It's not a smart city. I don't know what you're talking about. No, we're going. Sure. I don't know what you're talking about. There's no such thing as a smart city. So stop making up stuff. Okay? To try to make it bad. You're really good at this. You make up shit and then make us on your own website. I just told you that there's no such thing as a smart city. We're developing a new piece of land for the state. You like to make up these conspiracies. It's great for you. I know it's good for your brand. I hope it works for you. But you don't get to make up shit up. Okay? So good luck. Okay?
Our ability to collaborate in ways that other states are not able to. That's the secret sauce. I really believe that. And that's what's going to lead us and allow us to continue to lead the nation in technological advancements, in smart cities, and really, there's no reason we can't be the first smart state as we use these partnerships, as we work together and combine to put those talents, those assets, and those opportunities together in powerful ways. So thanks for what you're doing to make that happen.
Okay. Anyway, he confronted Jason about that up at I think it was the Republican convention, and talked back like he didn't know. But unfortunately, for him, he had done a luncheon on it in 2019, so before Jason confronted him. So he is aware of what the smart city, smart state is. So that just kind of gives a preface of that. Now, with Utah, because we're going to be hosting the 2034 Olympics, everything is moving at a pretty quick pace here because they want the transportation system all set up. I'm sure if you're paying attention, you're seeing that there's a lot of alarm bells about the kill switches in the vehicles that are going to be happening. So that's where they can turn off your car essentially from a remote access point. But also your car is now turning into a surveillance system. And Utah did sign up with V2X, which is vehicle to vehicle communication. That is signed up. We have Aspire as well here, which is again another transportation system. So Utah has really been focused on transportation, and because we're getting the Olympics, that's being rushed even further. I'm sure you're going to see air taxis, all those types of things. And I think it is critically important that Utah start to really ask questions about transportation. You need to pay attention to transportation because very few do, especially if it's the legislature. They're not in those meetings. They don't pay attention. Same with political subdivisions up at the legislature. You need to go to those meetings and find out what's happening because transportation is where they get your cities on the hook. So your cities are being told we have to put in high density housing. We have to have a mass transit hub. We have to have this. We've got to have it. And we've got to have it in time for the games and so forth and so on. And then if the city says, no, I'm not going to do that, allegedly, although again, I will send Jason proof, but allegedly, the cities are being told that if they don't comply, they will not get road money. So the roads won't get fixed. The infrastructure that we actually do need will start to crumble if they don't comply with these housing and mass transit hub mandates. So those are tied together. And I think maybe Utahns aren't aware of that, and even other states. Housing and transportation are completely tied together. And so people are paying attention to housing a little bit, but they're not paying attention to transportation. Now, obviously housing, we're being told we're in a housing crisis. The problem with that is that, again, if you look at a United Nations program, it's called the Regional Action Plan 2030. That is literally what we're implementing here. So again, that's a global plan. So how is this beneficial for Utah is my question. How is this focused on just Utah? Is this the Utah problem, or has there been a problem created and now we're forcing a solution that will further remove people from owning their own property, their land, and being able to have a healthy environment for families? And the reason I bring that up is because most people, when you talk to them about raising families, they feel they need a yard, obviously, or a safe place to raise their children. They can go outside and play like they should. But if you're in all of these box high density housing units, you have no yard except for what they call open space, which is usually a shared space. So you don't have any way. Think about 2020 when we were all locked down. If you didn't have a yard for your children to go play, or even your dogs, if you're a dog, cat person, etc., there's nowhere to get out, right? You're very locked in. And so I think the American dream that we grew up with is being stripped, and it's the you will own nothing and be happy about it. And Utah is very, very aggressive on this agenda, extremely aggressive on this agenda, because the people have said, we don't want this. We don't want this. And they keep going. And they call it NIMBYism, not in my backyard, Gil. But here's the thing. People can choose to live in Salt Lake City if they want. They can live in high rises. They can live in high density. They can live in mixed use. They can live however they want there. That's an option in Salt Lake City. But other people who live in different parts of the state that are much more rural or very single family home oriented chose that location because that's how they want to live. It is not okay to push that on to other places. It's not okay to say, I know that you moved here intentionally to raise your family safely and have space and single family home, but we're now coming in after you bought the house, you put all the work into it, you own it. We're coming in now to tell you, too bad, we're forcing this into this area. We're going to, mandate high density housing here, which changes the whole entire, the whole entire city or town. So, and sometimes better, sometimes worse, but that should be up to the people. That's the people's choice. It's not the state to mandate that and force onto the cities and towns. And then, I'm trying to go through water. So there's a one program that Lisa mentioned before, like everything going into oneness, one world order, one all this stuff. There is a one water program. I'm not going to get too much into water because in Utah it's extremely complicated, but the goal is to move everything into a controlled water system. And Utah has mandated smart meters, and it's getting worse. So I would say that's another area that people need to really, really start paying attention to, especially if you're in farming and ranching, and probably if you've already been sort of paying attention to that, but you need to take a closer look. It's getting worse, the control on water. And of course, Great Salt Lake, we're going to divert all of our water to the Great Salt Lake, all this kind of stuff. But there needs to be a really honest, hard conversation about water with data centers, with the Great Salt Lake, with farming, with drinking water, all of that. The next thing is energy. Obviously, energy, Utah has a all of the above policy, meaning they will do anything necessary for energy. So that could be windmills, that can be nuclear plants, that can be whatever. They will do anything for energy. And in a way, that's good. It builds the economy. However, what is the energy being used for? Are we using that for AI data centers? And again, surveilling people and pulling that into that system, that's a question that, again, needs to be had and is part of the smart city infrastructure. So I think the biggest thing, and I'm just going to kind of wrap up my part quick here, the number one thing everybody needs to be asking is why is this pressure for high density housing and mass transit? So think what they're doing with the front runner line, all these bus lines, etc. And the car is getting more expensive, your insurance is getting more expensive, fuel is getting more expensive, all of this stuff to pull you away from your right to travel freely in your own vehicle. You need to start really honing in on that right now, because once we go over that cliff, and it's going to be really hard to come back from. So that's kind of my thing. You need to get involved in your local city and county council meetings. You need to read your general plan, and you need to know who your planning commission is, and you need to go and have talks with them and engage with them and see where their general plan actually came from, who was advising on that, and how that all came to be, because there is an agenda, and it is beyond Utah. I know we don't like to talk about it, but it is. And just one last thing to that, there is the federal piece in between the UN and Utah. Obama codified smart states in 2015. So you guys can go read that. That was Obama codifying it. And the person who started Smart States, it was originally called Smart Utah, was Mike Leavitt in 1993-94. And then all 50 governors signed on to Smart Utah, which flipped into Smart States. So again, Utah was instrumental in this move.
Oh, Jen, you're amazing. Yeah, I mean, it seems like Mike Leavitt's been instrumental in a lot of the pushing Utah into this globalist, tyranny. There's some of the stuff that where these things we're concerned about. And it's also interesting, his brother David Leavitt and his dad Oker Leavitt all tied into some things we've been talking about here for the past year. Yeah, I hope you appreciate what she brings to the table, because she has done a phenomenal job researching, understanding the bills, and she's able to speak with authority. And I will tell you, she is extremely credible with this. And again, why does this matter? The world is changing. It is changing dramatically, and it's changing very quickly. And our children are going to be inheriting the world that we create. And at one point, someone's going to look back and say, what did you do when this was happening? Did you stand or did you sit? Were you waiting for the politicians to fix the country? Were you waiting for the church? And I believe we all have, again, we the people, this is, our responsibility to stand. This is our country. And if these decisions are things that concern you, I believe we have the responsibility and the power to stand and stop it. And I hope you'll also see that this is not left versus right issues. This is about freedom. This is about, do we believe in individuality? Do we believe in the power in the individual do we believe in the power of the individual, or do we believe in the power of the state? Because to me, these things are very concerning. Carolina, obviously this ties right into what you're going to be talking about.
Yeah.
What have you got?
So I'm going to be talking about Module 3, that third layer, which is all about the technological agenda, and I'm going to really just focus on Utah. There's so much to cover, and it's almost impossible because every day you turn on the news and there's something else that directly ties into it. So I had to really curate it down to just the top 3 issues. But before I get into that, I really just want to talk about the leading institutions that are the big heavy hitters, the really big global and technological institutions that are doing all of the innovating and that are part of this power structure. So although they operate in parallel, a lot of them will operate in parallel to the United Nations, their priorities do differ. And so I've kind of categorized them into 3 chunks just to be thinking about. So in this slide that you're now seeing, there are a group of international organizations and national organizations that are all based on policy and defense. Organizations like DARPA, like NASA, they operate differently. So because they are mostly, defense organizations, they have a lot of funding. They have minimal oversight so that they can pump out the technologies quicker, and they aren't, bogged down by any kind of red tape and things like that. They do run parallel with global, the global agenda, but they aren't completely in line with them. Then we have research and creation institutions like universities and things like that that are really pushing a lot of like the genetic, advancements. And they also run parallel with a lot of the different global, with the global agenda and framework. But what you're going to see is that there's the deployment scale institutions like Google, OpenAI, X. These ones are the ones that really are in lockstep. They're in direct alignment with explicit participation with the United Nations agenda. And so Microsoft as well. So they are using all of the sustainable development goals to guide their framework and to move things forward. They're really pushing a lot of the ESG reports, and they reference the SDGs directly. So I just wanted to share that there's this whole other swath of different kinds of global technological superpowers that are operating. But now in this next slide, you're going to look at Utah and Utah's unique environment. I want to talk about the word environment because we're going to be using that a lot as we discuss the technology. So Utah's in a really, really unique place because we have this perfect environment. We have Silicon Slopes. We have this really motivated, fast-growing tech sector here that's part of our culture. We have strong collaboration between government and private companies. And there's this real willingness to move quickly and to test these new ideas. And my presentation today is going to focus on 3 main examples of this perfect environment that Utah is fostering. The first is that we have this the governance and the AI policy is really being rooted here in Utah. So we're doing a lot of pioneering work with things like SB 149 that's allowing this kind of regulated sandbox environment, and I'll explain a little bit more about that in a minute. But in a nutshell, it's Utah's experimenting with how AI should be governed. And the rest of the nation is watching, the rest of the world is watching and how it plays out. So we have a lot of opportunity as well to influence that as a people, to say, hey, this is, you guys have crossed a line, we're not okay with this. Like we can do that now. It's happening in real time. So we also have the infrastructure being laid, and I'm going to talk about that with the data centers. And then I also want to talk about deployment, which is the surveillance apparatuses that are operating here in Utah. And that are being, promoted at scale, across the nations and throughout the world. And I also have to say that the United Nations needs this to happen for their agenda to work. So they're closely watching how Utah, manages all of this. So let's move on to the next layer of this environment. It's all about the rules. So Utah is actually helping write the rules for AI right now. So in 2024, Utah passed one of the first artificial intelligence laws in the country. And what it does is it creates an office of artificial intelligence and policy. And then there's a learning laboratory whose stated purpose is not to inform the state regulatory framework, is to inform the state regulatory framework and evaluate the proposed AI regulation and produce recommendations for legislation regulation. So right now you're looking at a slide that shows SB 149 on artificial intelligence amendments, and it's directly, helping, how to define how AI is going to be governing and being regulated moving forward. So it's something to really keep an eye on. And I want to talk about this next slide, which is this sandbox. Like, what do you guys mean when you say sandbox? Well, it's just a testing playground. That's all it means, that Utah is a testing playground for all of these companies and all of their systems and how they, make the rules for how to govern AI. A lot of times, well, in history, we've been able to figure things out and have public discourse and really hash it out as a population. And now things are fast-tracked so quickly, we can't do that. So it's happening simultaneously. And we need the quicker, the sooner that us as a population, as a regular average Joe citizen, can understand these things, the more we can have an impact and persuade and jump into the conversation. But if we don't, it's just steamrolling us. And so it's really critical that more and more people can understand what's going on. So over time, these systems, they will spread and they'll scale out nationally and internationally. And the idea is like, well, let's just have this controlled environment, the sandbox, okay? There's parameters. You guys go play in the sandbox, innovate, create, do whatever. It's all sanctioned by the state. Everybody's, eagerly watching all of the innovations. But these systems are just, the companies are watching how things play out because they will build systems to match whatever the rules emerge from that. And let's move on to this next slide. The power is shifting, and this is the struggle, is that it leads us to the second layer of infrastructure, in that whatever's happening in real time, it's on the ground. These data centers are actual physical buildings that have to store massive amounts of data, and it's in somebody's neighborhood. Like, you can't get over that. So we're using all these systems, and we don't really realize the impact that it's having in local communities when things like that get implemented there. So our local communities are carrying the cost, okay, through the land use, through the energy demands, and through the environmental impact. So this slide, what you're looking at right now is the world, okay, in the United Nations. It needs this algorithmic governance to have an eye on everything and to surveil and to collect data on everybody, everywhere. But that will have to be implemented in somebody's actual backyard. And it's going to take up real resources. Water, we talked about that. So whoever controls the infrastructure, okay, there's a power shift happening. Whoever controls the infrastructure, controls the data, controls the systems, controls and shapes the decision-making environments. And meanwhile, the local communities have to carry that load. They have to carry the environmental costs and the resource costs, taxpayers, right? So these global systems are built locally, and they're affecting everyone. So everyone has to have a voice on these matters. And the exciting thing is that across the nation, across the world, people are coming together from all different political parties to say, we don't want data centers in our backyard. We want to have access to our water. We don't want our water to be funneled to cool these things, to be able to, do all of this kind of algorithmic governance that is happening. So there's this power shift happening, and we need to understand that, we are the people is just so key on where the power truly lies. But if we don't exercise our, if we don't engage, then that power shift is just going to go right through our fingers, and we're not going to be able to have any kind of a say in what's happening. And that, for a large part, is happening, and why my organization, Big Ocean Women, is kind of addressing things from a different angle, which I will share in a minute. So this next slide, we have these data centers popping up everywhere, so many happening here in Utah. And I have a slide here that actually looks at data centers in the United States too, because it's really good to have an eye on that. But there's more data centers in the US than in all other major countries combined. It's astronomical. It is so much. And then largest data centers here in Utah. We have one coming up that's a proposed gigasite. It's the Delta Gigasite. It's the largest data center in Utah. It's located in, southeast of Delta in Millard County. And it's over 20 million square feet. Okay, it's the world's largest data center campus. It's bigger than, the facility in China. So it's really important that we realize, I'm looking at the slide right now, and it is the environment around it. Okay, if I'm just looking aesthetically, it's just dead. It's just ugly. It's not what we want to be surrounding ourselves with. We live in these beautiful mountains. We want to cultivate our children in, beautiful gardens and have good, healthy things to eat. And this is the future that is before us. It's just it's so devastating.
Does it talk about how much water those use?
Yeah, I'm going to get into that right now. So my next slide, just before I get into the water, we're kind of in a place of tension, actually, because we have leaders like Governor Cox, who in one breath are saying, we have to compete. We need to expand the data centers. It's going to use a tremendous amount of energy, but it's the global arms race. If we don't do this, we're going to be at a significant disadvantage. That's the language being shared from our leaders. But in the same breath, they're also saying, I urge all Utahns to be extremely mindful of the water, right? We had this executive order all about water conservation. So it's like, what? What do you mean? So I'm going to scrimp and save and, not be able to have a garden, not be able to grow healthy things for my family to eat so that we can, this arms race, right? We need that water to go to the data centers. Is that what you're trying to tell me? I don't like that. I think a lot of people don't like that.
Meanwhile, they're putting smart meters on so they can monitor every
drop.
And
right.
turn off.
Yep. Yeah, it's alarming. And I think we need to wake up. I think we need to ask these questions. Say, what are you talking about? Really? So the average Utah home is going to not be able to, water my tomato plants. You're trying to tell me I can't, water my chickens, or I'm not going to have water for my bees?
Meanwhile,
because
they're passing legislation that makes it illegal to capture rainwater.
100%. So the self-reliance element is really alarming. Utah comes from a rich heritage of wanting and striving to be self-reliant. It's part of our culture. It's part of our, framework here. And we're getting strong-armed into being completely dependent on the state for everything, and that's very alarming.
It's just interesting they put the data centers in the desert, not out east where they have all the water.
Yeah.
And they soak up
We're
our
already
minimal water while they're
exactly.
trying to say, hey, the Great Salt Lake's low. We're going to now pump hundreds of thousands of millions of gallons into that.
Yeah.
And have the data centers. And who pays the price? Your garden.
Yep.
You.
Yep.
No country has ever been able to save a disappearing lake ever in history, but Utah just said that they would be the first. So the Great Salt Lake, which is obviously the largest saltwater lake in the Western Hemisphere, has now officially lost 67% of its water. It hit an all-time record low in 2022, and then a Utah official had to call it an environmental nuclear bomb. The exposed lake bed is now blowing toxic dust laced with arsenic, mercury, and lead into communities across the state. And if the lake disappears entirely, scientists are saying that the surrounding mountains could lose half of their snowfall. Now here is where this story is about to get incredible, because Utah's governor just announced that they're going to be refilling the lake by 2034. To even stand a chance, they need to add the equivalent of 400,000 Olympic swimming pools of water every single year for 8 years straight. They have now launched a $200 million partnership. Trump posted "Make the Lake Great Again," and then Josh Romney is now leading a $100 million fundraising campaign to save the lake. By 2034, the world is either going to see the first ever salt lake rescue in history, or they're going to see a desert.
It's so devastating. So these facilities, they process enormous amounts of data. The data centers require massive amounts of water and energy to cool them. And so in some Utah facilities, they use about over 100 million gallons per year. And in one case, a single Utah data center used 126 plus million gallons of water in 1 year. So Utah's already, you just hit the nail on the head. We're already in one of the driest states in the nation. And now, our watersheds are being funneled to the Great Salt Lake, which is exactly what you just said. Every gallon is just being sucked into this thing. And we know that water is life. Big Ocean Women, we talk about water all the time. Water is life. What's going to happen? If things continue shrinking, what's going to happen to all of the other environments that we want to see thrive and grow? Our neighborhood environments, our home environments, our community environments. What about those environments? I'm not as interested in, artificial environments. I'm interested in real, tangible, beautiful environments that will cultivate the next rising generation.
It's
as a mother,
we're going to choke off real life so that we can send all that water to artificial life and
100%.
And to track and data and spy on you.
100%. It's so bizarre. It's a very dystopian reality we're living in right now. And I have to say, Big Ocean Women, we do a really good job of linking arms with average people, with women, with mothers. And we can no longer cover our eyes to these things. We have to get a little uncomfortable. You don't have to know everything, but link arms with us and we will show you in a very easy way and in a way that isn't going to overwhelm and paralyze you. But we have to start waking up to these things, okay? We can do it together. It doesn't have to be scary, but we have to. I just can't stress that enough. So let me, the slide that you're looking at here is the Great Salt Lake. Wherever you are on the debate, okay, natural ecosystems matter, okay? But so do farms and homes and agriculture. That matters too. And I believe in a God of abundance. I believe that there is enough. I think, though, that when we are moving in the wrong direction, the scarcity comes with it. So if we're moving in a direction that's propelling us and just shoving us into a corner with a scarcity mindset, that shows me that we're on the wrong track. We need to believe in a God of abundance, okay? And I have an image here of farms, homes, and agriculture. I personally run a little homestead. I teach in a micro school. I teach children how to be earth stewards. That is a very big part of who I am. I believe in the environment and in being a righteous steward of the environment. But I also believe that there's a God that is protecting us and is a God of abundance and that there is enough for everyone and to spare. So let me move on to that third layer of this environment. Utah has some of the top surveillance monitoring companies in the world. We have LiveView Technologies, which is the physical mobile surveillance like mechanisms that you see with all of those, solar panels on them. And they get propped up in these public spaces and they get to look and surveil you. We have Banjo, which is an integrated data predictive monitoring system. It's a systemic level company. And then we have Vivint too. So it's the in-home surveillance device that is surveying you, inside your home. And all of these things together really start to layer. You have the governance, you have the infrastructure, and then you have like these surveillance deployment kind of companies propping up. And so Utah has a very deep environment that's really entrenched in this stuff. And it's really important that we understand that. So how it's showing up in real life, walk into a Walmart. You've got these high-level surveillance cameras. I had my little daughter, 9-year-old daughter, I'm like, count how many you see. She's like 9, just in the lobby. Real-time monitoring technologies, a lot of predictive analytics coming up, a lot of AI-assisted tracking. All of these are being used in public spaces, retail environments, and security systems. And the scary thing is that what begins as safety and efficiency, it starts to expand everywhere. So it's all about access. Like if you don't toe the line, we're going to cut off your access. They know everything about you. And you talked a lot about, China. And we are moving towards that in lightning speed. So it's really important that we open our eyes. Okay, my big question is, how do we respond? Like, what do we do? What now? This next slide is a person that I really respect. It's Catherine Austin Fitz. She's been talking about how these things are moving so quickly and what we can do about it. And a lot of her recommendations are things that Big Ocean Women are already doing that I would like to just share with you guys today. This infrastructure is being built. And a lot of times what the answer is actually the opposite of that thing. So they want you to become very dependent, become self-reliant through your knowledge, through your skills, through just, I don't know, small things. Be creative. You'll be inspired. As you reach out to God, you'll be inspired to know what to do. Strengthen your family. Like the more AI and the more the tech component is saturated in our lives, the more atomized we become, the more distant we become from other people. So turn away from that and turn towards your family, okay? The more they're trying to build these online communities, build real life communities. Be intentional. And then the very last thing is educate yourself. Don't be afraid. Listen to this podcast. Share it with other people. Read books. Educate yourself. And this brings me to my last thing that I want to talk about is that everyone here is invited to Big Ocean Women's Awaken Arise Maternal Leadership Summit. It's going to be incredible. It's May 9th this year, coinciding with Mother's Day. We want to bring this knowledge to as many mothers in the world as possible. And we are doing that through our international waves, our chapters. But we want to do that just as widespread as we possibly can. Anywhere where there is a group of women that want to gather and want to put on a summit, we will go and we will present on all of these things. And this is going to be our big kickoff one. So please come and join us, and hopefully we can educate as many more people about this as possible.
I love it. I love it. Hey guys, just a quick update. Just want to thank you again for all of your support. We have the greatest appreciation for all of you out there who care about freedom, who care about standing up against tyranny, who care about children. We have the deepest appreciation and respect for all of you. One of the things we've talked about many times is the importance of water. We have done show after show about how toxic the water is in here in Utah. We've talked about how we know that there are the same things that the pharmaceuticals, the things that the fertilizers that are
glyphosate, which is now on the federal level being pushed through and will be in more of our water and food supply.
These things, including birth control, are seep into the soil and into our water. The water you drink in this state comes from these aquifers, and these things are not being fully filtered out by the city. It is something I believe is an imperative for our health that we are not drinking tap water. Find a solution. That we are encouraging people to find a solution. If you need a solution, we have partnered with Century H2O. It's an incredible organization. They have been trying to help us in this fight, help us with our lawsuit costs, and they have the solution. Honestly, I don't know a better solution out there. It is incredible. It filters all the water in your home, but it doesn't take out the minerals that God designed to be in the water for your health, and it also increases the amount of potassium and magnesium in your water. It is incredible. I mean, the benefits are insane. We've talked about it. Please look into that. If you do not have a solution, go to our website, click on wellness. You can see Century H2O. If you can't do that, there's whole house solutions. There's solutions for if there's an emergency and water goes out and you are on the road and you need to be able to have fresh water anywhere. They have solutions for that. And if you need to, if you can't afford that, and if you just want to have something under your sink to filter the water you're drinking, they have solutions for. I mean, literally just a little over $300. Put in our code, We're the People, and you get a 10% discount. But please make sure you have a solution to clean your water. We believe in it, and we believe in Century H2O. And with that being said, thank you for all of your support, and we'll jump back into the show. So much there. And I hope people will go through, honestly, maybe a couple of times the show and all of the feedback so far and the things we've learned, because it's powerful and it's very relevant. And really as you look at all these things coming together, digital ID, the surveillance state, the social emotional things, and all these, you see this movement towards what China looks like with the social credit score, where if you're not living the standards of this good global citizen, guess what? You lose access, whether it's to water, whether it's to your car, whether it's to the roads, or whether it's whatever it is, whatever smart system that you're involved with. But to me, what I see is one of the greatest concerns where we are heading And ultimately, I believe that is the ultimate thing that that brings all these things together that we've been talking about with, again, the top of the pyramid. It's not left versus right. It's, it is to take away the control of the individual, and it is the merger of human and machine. It is transhumanism, and that is where all this is heading. And so I really am excited to have True Ott to talk about this, because he's been aware of this for years, been sounding the alarm bell. Now you can jump on so many podcasts and see how they're continually moving AI until it's actually integrated in you. You can see what Elon Musk is doing.
By 2030, the connections will start to be made between artificial intelligence and the human brain. We've been through a process of preparation, of getting people, first of all, stage one, addicted to technology that they hold. And they're targeting specifically the young, because the young of today are going to be the adults when they want to bring this AI connection in full blown. For that to happen, they have to get people addicted to technology to the point where they'll accept it and where it's the most natural thing in the world. So the next stage, because the idea is to get in the body, the next stage is to get on the body. Holdables, we went to wearables, we went to Bluetooth, Google Glass and Apple Watches. And the next stage is to go in the body, which is already starting in places like Sweden. People in Sweden now are having parties to celebrate someone being microchipped. Sales pitch is, when we connect to artificial intelligence, we'll be superhuman intelligent. No, you'll become subhuman intelligent. You'll become a vehicle for artificial intelligence, a psychological process, which is known as preemptive programming. You're going to usher in a world that is so different, so dramatically different, resistant, that says, hold on a minute, you want to do what? So you prepare them for it through preemptive programming. You put out a stream of movies out of elite-controlled Hollywood. You put out television programs, you put out books, you put out all these things that basically portray the world you want to take people into. So when you literally start to bring it in, there is almost a familiarity with it, because you prepared people by portraying it over and over again. This is a whole psychological process, familiarizing us with artificial intelligence, getting people to interact with it until it becomes the most natural thing in the world. By 2030, the connections will start to be made. Human brain will be connected to what he calls the cloud. Artificial intelligence will be more and more of human thinking, until basically it's the totality of human thinking, at which point we won't be human anymore in terms of the consciousness processes we are using today. We will be artificial intelligence.
But I'd like to now go ahead and turn the time over to True, talk about what is transhumanism, why should people can be concerned about it, and how is it being rolled out in our backyard.
Well, thanks, Jason. Yes, and hats off to the panel. My goodness, I just said wow. It's just good stuff. So again, what I'm going to share is what I've been talking about literally since the 90s in 38 years of radio. And seeing it all culminate now, to me, is jaw-dropping and shocking. As early as 2017, I was declaring there would be a pandemic roughly in 2020. And I was mocked and marginalized and told I was, a really bad conspiracy theorist. But we all know now that's all happened.
So bad.
Okay, that's a good thing. But let me just, I put together this presentation based on a lot of old slides, believe it or not, going back into the 90s and even into 2000 leading up to the pandemic. So let me just start with this first slide. It's one of my favorite quotes by Reza Aslan about what it's the mindset of an authoritarian person. Authoritarians tend to consolidate support by using fear. And that's the root word of panic, pandemic, fear-based. But more importantly, by driving a wedge among people they want to control. Now think about that deeply. Driving a wedge, separating out in what's called the Hegelian dialectic. Oh, this is all good for us. It's good to be a global citizen. It's not good to have countries and individualism, and that's the wedge. just to begin with. That's what I see happening, and I've been talking about this forever. But where did all this begin as far as the Utah connection? Now, I began doing radio in the 90s because I saw what was happening among the power elite of Utah, specifically a gentleman that I knew personally growing up in Cedar City, Utah, okay, and my alma mater, Southern Utah University. And I honor the family at the time when I said, well, what's going on here? Mr. Leavitt, I call him Mikey, okay, just for what it's worth. This slide that you're going to see now is so important. This is a slide from Mikey on what is called pandemic planning. But here's the key. This was in the early 2000s. They're planning this that early. And I'm sitting here, okay, putting the pieces together, connect the dots. This is what I guarantee you, the elite, don't want you to hear this. So please, take this, share it widely, and review it multiple times. As Carolina said, and Lisa, go back, share this. Don't just watch it one time. Go back and analyze this, and more importantly, internalize it and share it. This is the Model State Emergency Health Powers Act you see on this slide number 3. MSEHPA, they like to have acronyms. This is actually written, and the architect of this was Mr. Leavitt, in 1999. Incredible. This was in preparation for September 11th, 2001. And so as the world is reeling about the Twin Towers coming down, global terrorism, oh my goodness, as Miss Clinton said so infamously, it's time that we give up individual freedoms for collective security. Wow, that's the mindset. And so this came out, remember the anthrax mailings, all of this, oh my goodness, we have eco-terrorism coming out, not just crazies flying into Twin Towers and bringing them down. No, this is the framework. So 9/11, the anthrax letters, is where our wonderful Mike Leavitt came with the Model State Emergency Health Powers Act as the legal stage for setting what we saw and were shocked by, frankly. Anybody that loves freedom were shocked by the panic and pandemic overstructure across the world now, okay? So the next slide, the problems here are pretty self-evident with the MSEHP, the Emergency Health Powers Act. Let me just bring these out to you, and if you haven't heard this before, I'm sure many people will say, really? Is this how the government was able to do this? Yes, it's the MSEHPA. The act allows a governor to declare a state of emergency unilaterally without any judicial oversight, okay? And thus it fails to provide the modern due process procedures for quarantine and other emergency powers, which should be logical and should be being done. It lacks then the adequate compensation for seizure of assets. It contains no checks on the power to order forced treatment and vaccination. Now again, I'm debating this in early 2001 because the other part of this is our wonderful ex-governor of Utah was saying it's not a matter of if, but when we're going to have a national pandemic. We have to have these draconian emergency measures in place. Second problem, the act includes an overly broad definition of what is a public health emergency. Never mind that science may debunk it completely by logical common sense as my role as a naturopathic physician. I said, holy mackerel, stop, back the truck up. This is not real. And we coined the term on radio show, the foul pandemic, the fake pandemic, okay? So there's no definition of that. It's whatever the health department says in this act, in this instance, is the World Health Organization, WHO, the United Nations says, right, is gospel. And we all need to buckle down to save millions of lives. That's the fear. the pandemic brings. Third, the act requires disclosure of massive amounts of personally identified health information. That set the stage for this whole surveillance state. What should be private and sacred to individuals, no, don't have to worry about that. So the bottom line to me in connecting the dots is really this is a battle for personal freedom. It's a battle really spiritually against control, authoritarianism, and as Jason said, freedom itself. It's a battle for freedom. I'll bring in some of my favorite scriptures. In my radio broadcast, I always tended to show that the answers are there in our scriptures. We just have to look there. And not only the answers, but it defines the problems as we're seeing them unfold. Psalm 139, I will praise thee, my God, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are thy works, and that fact my soul knoweth right well. We're fearfully and wonderfully made by a divine creator that loves us. And that's all that really matters at the end of the day. And here we go into Revelation chapter 18, verse 23. Amazing core prophecy of the book of Revelation. And it quotes, and the light of a candle shall shine no more in thee, the people of God. And the voice of the bridegroom, in this case, the bridegroom is Jesus Christ, shall not be heard in you anymore. Why? For your merchants were the great men of the earth, the billionaires, the power people of the earth. For by your sorcery, all the nations of the earth were deceived. That's Revelation 18, verse 23. Now, in the Greek, pharmakia is what the word is in sorcery. So medicine, pharmacy, science. And finally, it leads us to the definition of what my segment is. What is this all heading? What exactly is transhumanism? And more importantly, the day of singularity as being brought out as their ultimate goal. The short answer to that in this slide, number 7, is simply, it's where the human being, the human individual, is transformed fully into a hybrid, artificial intelligence-driven robot, blended together. Now, what I'm going to show you now will be shocking to many people. It was shocking to me. When I was digging deep into this, I was actually asked to be a part of this group. And I'm just like, no, do I look stupid? I mean, come on, really. It's literally called the, quote, Mormon Transhumanist Association, MTA. Now, here's what's shocking. It was founded not just a few years ago. It was founded in the year 2006, ladies and gentlemen, with 14 original members. And this is where the core of the whole transhumanism thinking process came from. It's shocking. Again, don't take my word for it because it is shocking. Just do your own homework. Spend some time going to the MTA, Mormon Transhumanism Association's website, and read it for yourself, funded by the 14 members. This slide, number 9, is showing you a man named Lincoln Cannon, one of the founders, and he shows the 14 original members. Look closely at this slide, and you see the 14th member is Spock. I mean, there's a story behind that, okay? But my goodness, what they're doing since 2006 is dovetailed into what is easily understood science when you cut through the layers of the onion. They want to make you think this is too hard to understand, but it really isn't. It's pretty simple. And let me just give you the broad strokes. We're going to talk about something called the VMAT2 gene. It's called the God gene. This slide number 10 is basically the basic primer of what is the God gene. It's the acronym for vesicular, and remember the word vesicular. monoamine transport 2% gene. It is called the God gene because this is what came out of the Genome Project during the Bill Clinton era, okay, his presidency. They found that the Homo sapiens and the great apes share 98% of the same gene structure. And they want you to believe that we all evolved from the great apes, that we evolved from the chimpanzees and or the gorillas, etc. But however, what the VMAT2 research found in the Genome Project is there's 2% of the human genome, just 2%, that's radically different than these great apes. And this is the God gene. It definitely has a function in the human genome that is not present in any other animal species, which, again, logic dictates that we didn't actually evolve. We were specifically created, just as it's incredibly stupid to say that my laptop here evolved into my cell phone and vice versa. It's nonsense. It's intelligent design, and we have this connection called the VMAT2 gene. So major studies have gone into the vesicular monoamine transport 2 gene, VMAT2. And here is the second paragraph in the slide. It is, in one of a better way to describe it, it's basically the OS operating system of our entire massively divinely created book of life called the human genome. It's the operating system for that. The monoamines, a part of it, it regulates the key human brain chemicals such as dopamine and serotonin that in turn activate our brain's frontal lobes. And that's what makes us unique. That's what makes us individuals. We have a different DNA, like it or not, where it's different. Man and woman, women to women. John here is different than anybody that I'm talking to. We have unique characteristics that should be celebrated. So this is what produces our individuality and our personality traits. Jason, all of his guests that he's had on over the years since he started this broadcast are talking about this in a way, because it is a spiritualistic structure. All right. So here's a great little slide, slide number 11, just showing the God gene and all the different publications. There's books written about this. I have them in my library. It was on the front page of most periodicals, Time Magazine. Here's Wikipedia's dictionary of definition of it. Quote, the God gene proposes, the hypothesis was really a theory, proposes that the human spirituality is influenced by heredity and that a specific gene called the VMAT2 predisposes humans towards spiritual experiences. Now keep that in mind. That's really important definition here as we go forward. Now once that's identified, our wonderful, shall we say, atheistic controlled scientists, largely funded by Mr. Gates and others in the billionaire class. Now that we know this, they said, how can we negate that and cut people's spirituality out?
Excuse me, on the left over here, we have individuals who are religious fundamentalists, religious fanatics, and this is the expression, RT-PCR, real-time PCR expression of the VMAT2 gene. We have individuals who are not particularly fundamentalists, not particularly religious, and you can see there's a much reduced expression of this particular gene, the VMAT2 gene. Another evidence that supports our hypothesis for the development of this approach. So we have some very, very remarkable data in this next slide. Here we have two brain scans. These are fMRIs. These are two different individuals with different levels of expression of VMAT2. On top is an individual who's a religious fanatic, an individual, and we've repeated this numerous times, that has high levels of VMAT2. Now, this individual down here who had low levels of the VMAT2 gene, this individual would self-describe as not particularly religious. In each case, these individuals were read a religious text. This individual lit up the right middle frontal gyrus. shown here. And that's a part of the brain that's associated with theory of mind. It's a part of the brain that has to do with intents and beliefs and desires. In marked contrast, here's an individual who would not particularly self-describe as religious. And when they're read a religious text, what you see is that this part of the brain called the anterior insula lights up. This is a part of the brain that's associated with disgust or displeasure on hearing something. The virus would immunize against this VMAT2 gene, and that would have the effect that you see here, which is it's essentially to turn a fanatic into a normal person. And we think that will have major effects in the Middle East.
How would you suggest that this is going to be dispersed? Aerosol?
Well, so the present plan and the tests that we've done so far have used respiratory viruses, such as flu or rhinoviruses. And we believe that that's a satisfactory way to get the exposure of the largest part of the population. Most of us, of course, have been exposed to both of those viruses. And we're quite confident that this will be a very successful approach.
This is fascinating. What's the name of this proposal?
Yeah, so the name of this project is FunVax, which is the vaccine for religious fundamentalism.
And you have
The next slide is a really important slide. Project 149AZ, as in zebra 2. This is directly from, I was monitoring this as a scientist, as a naturopath. They have what's called the FUN, F-U-N, Vax quarterly report. FunVax. It's fun to them. This is fun for them. FUN is an acronym. Fundamentalism undermined and negated. Fundamentalism, meaning basic spirituality. This is dated June 1st of 2007. Quote, the objective of this phase of Project 149AZ2 is to prepare a viral vector that will inhibit/decrease the expression of VMAT2 within a human population. And this report, my jaw dropped. They're planning to use this, and they have, because the guinea pig sandbox, like Carolina said, was the Arab Spring and what they were doing in the Muslim population of the Middle East in the invasion of Iraq and Afghanistan, and that it's an amazing what the military did to experiment on this. This next slide, believe it or not, is actually from the Inside Circular put out by Pfizer in the COVID-19 circular of the vaccination, the different ones produced by Moderna. We're going into exactly what this means, but let me just sum this up quickly. Their actual name of SARS-CoV-2, according to the WHO, World Health Organization, is actually VSV SARS. VSV stands for vesicular, there's that vesicular again, stomatitis virus. Oh, when you really follow the research of this COVID-19 VSV spike variant, whoa, there's a very, very underhanded reason why this Frankenstein virus was created. It has to do with suppressing the VMAT2 gene in the human genome. Now, I'm going to just fast forward into a broad area of what was being done in the technology development of this vaccine, so-called. It's not that at all. It's a genetically modifying device, okay? You have to understand something that was talked about during the COVID years, but only by conspiracy theorists. But it's there, folks. It's called the CRISPR technology. CRISPR is an acronym that stands for Clustered Regularly Interspaced Short Palindromic Repeats. That's what CRISPR means. What does that mean in layman's terms? Simply, they can identify a segment of your human DNA containing short repetitions of base sequences and then come and actually snip those out and cut it out. Yeah. It's done by lipid, artificial intelligence-driven nanobots. This is not wacky science, folks. Here is the slide number 15. Meet Chinese national Feng Zhang. Here's his picture. He's the developer and discoverer of CRISPR. He was working under a huge Chinese communist grant provided to MIT in 2011. He's a brilliant gentleman. He's a brilliant scientist. So the Boston-based company that based on CRISPR technology to patent the gene editing applications call themselves Moderna, modifying RNA. Moderna. Are you seeing the connections here, ladies and gentlemen? Oh, well, this is old history, you're saying. This is all past in the pandemic night in the rearview mirror. No, because it's applicable right now with transhumanism. I'll tie it all together. Please bear with me. The FunVax virus, the vesicular stomatitis virus, VSV, was perfect and was actually tested in water supplies in U.S. military-dominated countries in the Middle East. And it was given primarily to fundamentalist Muslim families, and the young people began to not be as rabid in their Muslim faith. I'm telling you, thousands of studies on what was happening in the Arab Spring. So here is all of this taking place in 2016, 2017. I'm covering this on my radio show daily. I had a daily 2-hour show. So the FunVax virus now is replaced by this CRISPR mRNA shots. And this is what's so stunning. It is designed by these miscreants to permanently remove the VMAT2 God gene from the human genome worldwide. Yeah, you heard that right, folks. That's what the agenda is. This is not only permanent to the vaccinated individual, but because it's now part of the new genome, it's passed down children to grandchildren. What's the result? Simple. It's this. You still function as a human being, okay? But you're the first step towards transhumanism, because now you're not functioning in your own God-given frontal lobes and spiritually connecting to God. You're entirely functioning what's called the brain basal ganglia, and this is literally called the reptilian portion of the brain. You first, me first. I don't care about my fellow man. There's no charity involved with those. Now, here is the fact of the matter. After the CRISPR technology was developed in 2011, we see the human trials going into 2012. They're called phase 1 tests, and these were conducted, sadly, on homeless humans in places like Miami, Florida. They were paid upwards of $5,000 in a debit card to use instead of cash. The phase 2 ongoing was animal testing. This began in the year 2016. I pulled up all these tests, and how this was ever able to be approved for human use is staggering, because the animals that were used were monkeys. They eventually began to exhibit cannibalism, where they would actually hit each other and start eating their own faces off. This slide is important. This is Dateline May 29th, 2012. This is slide number 18. You may have heard this. It made national headlines, but we tend to forget about it because, it's just one crazy guy. No. May 29th, 2012. Police identified 31-year-old homeless man Rudy Eugene, totally naked, have no clothes on. The officers who responded to this right off the freeway, motorists were stopping and looking at this naked guy beating up and eating the face off another naked homeless man on a downtown Miami highway. The homeless man Ronald Popo, 65, an older gentleman, was named as the victim who was killed.
I thought they said that was bath salts.
Oh yeah, called misinformation. They offered that as bath salts, yes, but that was debunked. It wasn't, because here's the rest of the story. I reported this in depth on my show. The investigation, if you dig deeper, they want you to say, "Oh, it's just these were high on this illegal basalt stuff." No, both men in the police investigation. Here's a picture on slide 19 of the officer in charge taking a picture of the identification debit card of what they were being experimented on, and this is mRNA technology. Oh my goodness, it was more CRISPR going to the root of the problem. And so they had to modify it a little bit because of the human trials. They don't want people doing this, shitting their clothes and eating each other's faces off. Okay?
So sad.
You can't make this stuff up. So this next slide, and I really trying to combine a lot of information here quickly, but here is my slide number 20, who's who in the WHO, the World Health Organization. Not much is being said about this gentleman, this Dr. Tedros. But let me give you some background of this man. I'm going to go and tell you exactly what's in a name, what his name is. And there's meaning in the Ethiopian culture of what names are, okay? Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, medical doctor, MD. He was appointed head of the WHO, the United Nations World Health Organization, in the year 2018. Very convenient time, knowing what's heading into the world's stage in just a year and a half later. Normally, the head of the WHO is elected for just 5 years. It's a 5-year reign. Yet, he is still the head of the WHO in this year, 2026. And there's no indication, whatever, that he will be replaced anytime soon. The name Tedros is the name of an Ethiopian emperor who is revered as wanting, the spirit of a supreme ruler, basically a dictator. Adhanom, the word in Ethiopian name, means savior or rescuer. So Tedros, the Ethiopian emperor, will be the one who saves us from who? Ghebreyesus is Ethiopian surname, meaning servant of Yahshua, Christ Jesus. So the three names combined literally means, quote, the powerful ruler who will rescue the world from the servants of Jesus Christ. Dr. Tedros is literally, ladies and gentlemen, an international terrorist. I'll let you see the slides, go through them. I won't take the time. But if you understand reports, again, here is this slide 23. What is Tedros' TPLF organization doing now, today? Christian genocide is rampant in the Tigray region of Ethiopia. Thousands and thousands of Christians, believers, are targeted and massacred as we speak. The United States State Department has categorized TPLF as a terrorist organization due to its, quote, violent activities before it became part of the ruling coalition and government of Ethiopia in May 1991. The head of this organization is this director of the World Health Organization today. Tedros was installed as the director primarily because of his long and deep friendship with Xi Jinping, the president of China. They are good buddies. Good buddies. Quote, this is from fellow in the know, Christian. This is the best quote I can leave. Tedros is the second to last person who should be heading the World Health Organization at this time in the world affairs. Foreign affairs expert told Fox News. The last person is Xi Jinping. They're two of the same pods. Now, I'll leave this and wrap this up with, again, scripture, Matthew chapter 24, verse 12. In the days before he comes again, in glory and power. Because iniquity shall abound, in Matthew 24, verse 12, the love of many shall wax cold. And that's what we're seeing here. There's just so much of this. Going back to that first slide, we have to understand that the big wedge is going to be this: people that love and care, and mothers, fathers, everybody that care, they'll be divided against for those whose love is waxed cold, because it's about science. It's about progress. It's about this and that. So I'll just wrap it up with this. The COVID-19 was a weapon, what I call a weapon of mass disruption. And it's still ongoing, because this technology has never been about making you sick with a cold or flu. It's about ingesting it in your water that you drink. Again, you mentioned water. Water is how they get it to people, okay? And when you start negating that VMAT2 gene, my goodness, you have what then is the perfect breeding ground for what Klaus Schwab, elitist World Economic Forum, declared: you'll own nothing and you'll be happy. My final slide is my own little comic strip. It's Klaus Schwab. You will own nothing, but I'll be the one that's happy.
Governments and corporations, for the first time in history, have the power to basically hack human beings. There is a lot of talk about hacking computers, hacking smartphones, hacking bank accounts, but the big story of our era is the ability to hack human beings. And by this I mean that if you have enough data and you have enough computing power, you can understand people better than they understand themselves, and then you can manipulate them in ways which were previously impossible. And in such a situation, the old democratic system stopped functioning. We need to reinvent democracy for this new era in which humans are now hackable animals. You know, the whole idea that humans have, you know, they have this soul or spirit and they have free will and nobody knows what's happening inside me. So whatever I choose, whether in the election or whether in the supermarket, this is my free will, that's over. We need to come to terms with the fact that, no matter, again, this is where philosophy meets computer science and biology.
So we've got a few questions, and I want to thank all of you guys for sharing. I mean, incredible minds here, incredible history on that. I didn't know a lot of that stuff true, so appreciate you sharing that. But so one question, and I'll ask this to Lisa. We've talked about a lot of different things, and you see digital ID moving forward, and you see Utah being, again, leading the charge on digital ID. I think it was a few years ago, Jen, was it when Utah started passing this stuff for digital ID?
Yeah, I mean, they had one that was the precursor, but then, right in 2020, 2021, they were going hard.
Okay.
Yep.
So, Lisa, how does all these things we talked about, do you see that coming together in the digital ID? What would you mind sharing about that?
Right. Well, Utah is one of the leaders in something called credentials tracking. I think one of our speakers talked about it here, and that goes back to not just academic skills, but these very subjective social emotional skills. And they collect them. It follows the student as they go through their grades. It can follow them into another school. It can actually follow them all the way from preschool to age 20, and that's actually a part of our flexible education system here. But with that, what they're trying to implement now is a digital credentials wallet. So it makes it easier for children to carry those skills with them and to report, say, to an employer or a future college they're trying to get into. These are the skills that I have. These are the credentials. And it's, again, not just these academics, but also these very social emotional skills. Are you presenting yourself as a global empathetic citizen versus being a selfish, not serving your community or caring about the common good type of person? And then that and I think also what needs to be said here is Utah is leading the way. There are actually other states calling us out for our social media age verification bills. That is another way, because what they're basically trying to do with a digital ID is connect it to every single system, right? How you use your money at the grocery store, how you, again, send your resume, how you log into your social media account. And so if they're able to do that through age verification, they can then set up every single person, not just children, to have to verify their age, but every single person will have to connect their physical ID, right, with the state, we had Real ID here also leading the way in Utah, to their social media accounts. And then what happens again, how can that ID then be linked to all of your opinions you are spouting online on social media? And can they then use that to brand you as an extremist or ding your social credit score in the future? I think also I wanted to talk a little bit about as education moves forward. And again, I was talking about how teachers now are providing those feedback loops for children as far as learning. And this is something actually I spoke for Carolina's organization at the United Nations. I did a presentation on social emotional learning, and I made the point that AI is going, as they're driving, and Utah is driving our children to more and more digital education. What happens then when those social emotional skills and the feedback loops trying to create that, perfect, idealized, subjective skills are then fed back to the children and fed back to the children until we are literally kind of like socially engineering people. So I think that's something we have to think about, is that, we just had a bill, HB 399, which tried to take away that tracking of students' subjective social emotional skills, and it got put on hold. And they didn't let us bring it back, even though we had put language forth for a second substitute. So Utah, this bill is coming back, and we want to see as much support as we could get next time we run this bill, because it's not just coming for your children, it's coming for you, it's coming for your workforce, it's coming for your everyday life, because once they're able to merge man and machine, and you have a digital wallet implanted inside of your hand, and you're using that to pay, what happens when you're not being the great global citizen that they want you to be?
Wow.
And it's not
right,
even
and
that.
to piggyback.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Go ahead, Jen.
I was going to say, to piggyback off of that, off of what Lisa and True both went over, is the civil society. Mm-hmm. So it is forced behavior modification, right? You're being corralled into this because you're going to hear this all the time. Oh, well, we're too far down this to, pull back, or, oh, this is where we're going. Nothing we can do about it. It's, out of the cart. Here we go. No, this is forced behavior modification, because the civil society in their world is the perfect utopia. But and I'm not religious. People know this, but that sounds like Satan's plan. At least how I was raised. It's the fault, right? Loss of free will, loss of freedom, and forced into a civil society situation. And who decides what is civil? Who decides what's bad and good?
Absolutely. Carolina, what would you have to say?
I was going to say that is just the very beginning, because what, you were touching on, True, it's the biotech integration. And so, like, the digital tracking through your wallet and through a chip implant or whatever is just one of the many different, amazing technologies that they're really trying to get inside of us. And I can share some more, where people can go to research. But the idea is that they are literally merging, just like you said, humans and technology inside the brain, so that there was like a very famous presentation given about their ideal work environment for people, is that you're sitting at your table, and there, your computer right here, you can just log on to the app that's part of your computer and check, your heart rate, your brain scans, and it can read your thoughts. That's the level that we're getting at, where if I'm going to share with you the link so you can put it on for people, but I'm remembering right now that it was like this little infographic, like cartoon that's being presented, I think at Davos, where, there's an employee sitting at her desk and, her playlist, she can just think it and it comes up. And then, she has a little crush on a coworker, but, how is the boss going to be reading it? Because it pops up. Like all of her thoughts are popping up on her boss's, he can just tell and read it. So, I mean, that's the direction that it's all. And every time we hear about it, just to be very clear, it's, we're about maybe 5-10 years behind. Like, we think that this is all cutting edge stuff. It's already been done.
Yeah.
And so now we're just learning about all of this, but the biotech and the integration and the augmentation and the gene editing and the splicing and all of that, that is the transhumanist road. That's where all of these things lead to, is the transhumanist road.
Yep.
So I
would also just add to that, when you have the Neuralinked technology, Lisa's first slide presentation showed the chip going into the brain of the child. That is happening. It's happening real time right now. And the way that I see that they're going to sell this is, listen, they know who's been vaccinated, which were loyal. They know what VMAT2s have been edited and those haven't. It's going to be us versus them. It's going to be that divisive wedge.
Well, I think there's one other thing too, is AI is going to replace how many people out of work. Yeah. And what's your way back into work?
Become one of the robots.
You put AI in you, all of a sudden now you can get back in the workforce. All right, here's a question that sometimes I get from people, and Jen, I'm going to direct this to you. You see the UN out there. It's not a part of America. It has nothing to do with our country. They're not elected people. They sit out there in these I guess New York. Actually, there's something else we talked about is the Utah-New York connection with them. But how is it? A little city like Orem or Lehigh, that's has city councilors and governors elected by the people. How is it the UN is actually able to influence and implement their agendas amongst the people that we're electing? Because it seems to a lot of people that can't be happening.
So there's a few methods, but one is ICLEI, and ICLEI will deny that they were ever involved, but they do have a website that shows the SDG goals. And again, Rosa Corey addresses ICLEI, et cetera. The other, on a more local, is Envision Utah. Envision Utah definitely uses scenario planning to kind of move the needle, but they do it in a soft manner. And I want to preface this with, I'm not saying everybody's evil, nefarious, ill-intending. The problem is that you've had 30, 40 years of at higher education learning. So think about your own local city planner. They go through schooling, and at the education, higher institutions, so like the UVU, BYU, et cetera, they're getting smart growth or quality growth planning taught to them. And so the problem is it's being implemented from there up, but it's from a global agenda, right? So the problem is most people can't pick that up. And to be even fair to some of the city planners and, again, Envision Utah, they don't even know where it's coming from. And then when you try to have the discussion to say, hey, let me show you how this is being implemented, let me show you where this came from, I hate to say it, but they just call you crazy. They look at you like you're nuts. If you mention UN, you're nuts. And so it's really unfortunate. And then the other thing, just to kind of back that up, this isn't on a city planning direction, but this is with pandemics like what True was talking about, just to kind of show you how close to home again this is. And I'm going to quote it. It's an article. But in addition, Dr. Osterholm is a member of the National Academy of Medicine and the Council of Foreign Relations. He's right there, Council of Foreign Relations. In June 2005, Dr. Osterholm was appointed by Michael Leavitt, Secretary of the Department of Health and Human Services, to the newly established National Science Advisory Board on Biosecurity. In July 2008, he was named to the University of Minnesota Academic Health Center's Academy of Excellence in Health Research In October 2008, he was appointed to the World Economic Forum Working Group on Pandemic. The reason I wanted to show you that is, do you see how closely that tie-in is actually to Utah? Yeah. So the problem is, you have, and I'll even say this because I don't know everyone's intentions, but I think a lot of people have been misled and that they are doing things for the greater good. So like, we're going to, tighten these resources. We got to limit growth, et cetera, because the greater good, right? This is for the best of the greater good, et cetera. That is actually, unfortunately, the opposite. It's having the opposite outcome, and it's harming people, and people need to wake up. So on a local level, you need to, again, pay attention to who is coming in and doing your city planning, who is coming in and working on transportation and housing. And then also, unfortunately, they call it smart infrastructure, so that's fairly easy. But again, that's that putting up, and it's usually through transportation, but the surveillance system coming in that way. And obviously, you need to be paying attention to your water. So, but that it comes in through all these different groups, NGOs, public-private partnerships. Those are the main ways it comes in.
Powerful. Thank you.
May
I
I add something to that?
Please.
Utah Coalition has done really, really great work, and others talking about the 2019 conference that Utah hosted. Okay. Utah is one of the only states besides New York that have hosted a conference inside the United States of America. And it just shows you how closely our leadership and the leadership of our state is tied to the United Nations and their agenda. They literally had a civil society conference here.
We were there.
Yes.
We were there. We had, it was an unreal time. We had a lot of women there. We were able to train a lot of women.
And again, just to clarify, I don't want you to keep going. Just make sure our audience has, normally the UN meets in New York or in other countries, but from what I understand, the only other place they meet in America or met is Utah.
Well, yeah, they are opening and broadening the civil society conference to be in other places. So they did one recently in Kenya. So
right, but in America, it's Utah, which is, and
New
again,
York,
and you
Geneva.
look at So I want to finish. I want to come back to this interesting relationship between the United Nations and Utah. But go on.
Right. So not only did they come at that time, and that was about building sustainable cities. That was the whole conference, what it was about. But then also, you and I did a show a couple years ago, Jason, where the president of the General Assembly came, and I reported on that. He spoke at Utah Valley University. And afterward, our Attorney General, Sean Reyes, came up to him and literally said, basically offering Utah's resources. And he says, anything you need, sir, yes, sir.
I don't think people realize what a powerhouse Utah has become with our silicon slopes. More unicorns emanating from Utah per capita than any other state. So I've worked again in that space, investing, buying, selling technology for years throughout California. Went to Berkeley for law school, so many of my friends and founders are from that area. But we have a vast number of resources here, and if we can be of any additional support in your critical efforts, please. Sir, yes, sir.
And then the president of the General Assembly went on to meet with our Lieutenant Governor, Deidre Henderson, and specifically was asking for access to information about Utah's water systems. And they had 9 water game changers. You can go back and watch that episode on We Are the People. And I highly recommend you do, because our leaders our resources are for sale here in Utah to the world agenda. And I think that's another thing. Spencer Cox, our governor, literally said to you, I don't know what smart cities are. And not just a few years earlier, he was at a smart city conference talking about how Utah was going to be the first smart state. And on top of that, just recently, He was the keynote speaker at the Abundance Summit. And that Abundance Summit is all about moving away, like Carolina was saying, away from this idea of scarcity. And yeah, they're going to say, oh yeah, now that we need all this resources for AI, resources are abundant. It's great. It's awesome. We're just going to, but it's not going to be localized to your area. Our resources are going to be pooled, and AI is going to be able to measure how much resources are available and then distribute it according to equity. So if Utah's resources are better needed in another country or another part of the nation, those are going to be stolen from our local citizens.
Yeah, and I just think it's important to remember that we have a representative form of government, that Cox and DJ Hendrickson and our lieutenant and our representatives, they are our employees. And what right do they have to be selling off we the people, our resources to us, to globalists?
Right.
Well, right, and it's not just those organizations. I think Utah needs to look into the China-Utah connection, and it's linked in with the United Nations NGO, and it's here in Utah.
Yeah, it's another issue we've talked about in the past. And the Associated Press did an article, and again, this is important. China is at war with America. They have been for some time, and according to the Associated Press, China has a stronger foothold in Utah than any other state in the country. They say they're able to influence our legislators to pass legislation they want and stop legislation they don't want. Again, so you see Utah in the middle of this, and then we talked about UVU. We talked about the organization someone just brought up, the Council of Foreign Relations, which is, Ezra Taft Benson said, is kind of like the hub of like these secret combinations, even far more dangerous than the UVU, kind of the very top of this pyramid. We know that the UVU has had a very tight role with the UN, correct?
Yep.
And Ingrid, what's the name of the president who just resigned? Ingrid.
Her last name.
East Astrid, right?
Ingrid Astrid.
Ingrid Astrid, and she is a permanent.
Astrid Tuminas.
Astrid Tuminas, and she is a permanent member of the Council of Foreign Relations. So that's like the top of the top, and how interesting that's where Charlie was shot. I mean, you just see so much stuff. Let me ask you. Okay, actually, I'm going to pause. Go ahead. Go ahead, Jen.
We also have the Salt Lake Council of Foreign Affairs.
Tell us about
FYI.
that.
I don't have it pulled up right now, but we do have the Salt Lake Council of Foreign Affairs. If my memory serves me correctly, they were working with the Utah Global Diplomacy UN NGO, but I'd need to verify that.
Okay, so here's another question. You brought up smart cities. Cox says there's no such thing. Are these moving forward? These smart cities, these 15-minute cities, are they moving forward? And if so, what can people see and what's going on? Does anyone have an answer for that?
The framework's already been established. That's why I'd love to spend my time working on, this is the way that I explain it to people, is that there was a time in my life before I knew what I know now, where I was like, oh, it's like a dam that's bursting and we have to plug the holes. We need more people to plug the holes. The dam's going to burst. And now, after being there for over a decade, I'm like, that dam is busting out. We're all going to, it's time to run and duck for cover. That's the best use of our time, in my personal opinion. So that's why Big Ocean Women is trying to educate people and saying, what can you do at home to prepare, to safeguard your families, to educate the rising generation? Because the systems are so entrenched that if you tease one little thread out, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because the whole thing is integrated like this. We're bound. And it's, in my opinion, it's been prophesied to happen. Yeah. Right? So it's kind of like, why are we spinning our wheels trying to take something out or trying to, picket or lobby or trying to change this thing when I am just speaking for myself now. I feel like the best use of our time is to turn back home, turn back to community, preach the gospel of Jesus Christ or your higher power, whatever it is that you believe in, and prepare spiritually, emotionally, psychologically, physically with resources. I feel like that's such a good use of our time. And maybe it's not for everybody. It is for me. That's where I want to do the most
Do you
work.
not feel like we have a responsibility to wake up our neighbors and stand up against it?
Yes, I think that the work that it takes in learning about it is essential for our own capacity and to develop personally and to become spiritually prepared and to teach our children. Now, I think that the action of going and becoming informed and being engaged, I'm all about that. I think that that's incredibly important. But if you're doing that for the outcome, like to turn this thing around, it's been prophesied that there's going to be a time. I don't know. I may be on a different path than you, but I think that we have like a responsibility and a stewardship. But I think that if you're doing it for this end outcome, that we're going to be able to rescue everything. In my personal opinion, the only person that's going to be able to do that is Jesus Christ. Right?
Yeah, and I think it's important to remember we are in a war, and it is an eternal war.
Right.
And wars consist of battles won and battles lost. And what I believe is we have a responsibility to fight while we are here on earth in the battles that are before us.
Right.
And we are not responsible for the outcome, because even though I believe there are some heavy battles coming that we will lose, it will get dark, that is prophesied. But the end of the war, we do win. God does win, and what will matter is did we, while we were here, stand and fight for right? Do we fight for freedom? Do we fight against the darkness? Or did we do what I see so many people here doing in Utah, have our heads in the sand saying, let's just not drink coffee and let's focus on being real housewives and have fun while we're here, and God's going to take care of things later. And I see so much of that in this state, and it frustrates me, especially when this appears to be ground zero.
Yeah, I agree with that, but I think that you have to ask yourselves, I would ask this, well, what is the fight? What is the fight? Are you talking about going and changing legislation and changing the governance of Utah? Are you trying to go and change the way that the smart cities are being built and brought here? To me, I think that the greater fight is done within us as individuals. Like, where is my standing with God? And then how am I turning around and nurturing my family and giving them the very best possibility to make it through what's coming. So I think that's a battle too.
It is.
And it's not for everybody. I think you're maybe being called to do this thing. And I feel like bringing the hearts back.
I think what it is everybody, God has a role for them.
Right.
Jen has a role, clearly has a role to be involved and to fight and to wake legislators up and to get them to stand. Every Lisa, True, I think God has sent everyone for different purposes. Each on their own will never stop what is coming, but God does miracles through small and simple people, and what no one knows is what their little actions will do to play a role in God's perfect plan. And in fact, I want to wrap up with two things. The first one is, we talked about all these dangers, all the threats. Is the United Nations a satanic organization?
I'm going to say yes.
Why?
I have done a lot of studies about their origins. They had the company that publishes their documents used to be called the Lucifer Publishing Company. Before they were like, maybe that was a bad idea. And then they changed it to the Lucius Trust. That was the same publishing company that Alice Bailey, who is a disciple of Helena Blavatsky, used to publish her writings. Like True was saying, they very much heavily had a depopulation agenda. They did rituals. The same guy who put social emotional learning in schools used to have Alice Bailey's books in his house. They used to channel, just like Alice Bailey and her disciples did. And so I do think that the UN's, and I've talked about on my YouTube channel, much of the spiritual stuff going on at the United Nations is done by the Spiritual Caucus, which includes many of the evolutionary leaders that were pushing that, we're looking into that gene that True just talked about in order to squash it. So I do think that there is an agenda here for sure.
Yeah, True. Very much good question. The overall agenda is to modify God's perfect creation, the human genome, and that's that goes back to Genesis. I mean, the battle against God from the fallen angels. And the consensus has always been the last 25, 30 years, or even going back to the early 1900s, to separate out the assault on truth. This is a fantastic book. I just brought it. The Assault on Truth by Jeffrey Masson. This documents what happens and the organizations of the first League of Nations, then it became the United Nations itself, through the science of people like the psychoanalyst structure, that they again, going back to Sigmund Freud's, my goodness, this is all documented very, very well, to take satanic ritual abuse and the role of clergy in that into what's now we call dispensationalism, which says this might have been true at the time of Christ, but it isn't true now. We know the science, schizophrenia isn't caused by demons. No, there is no such thing as satanic ritual abuse because really Satan doesn't exist. That's what's happening, and it's not just in the LDS church. It's in Christian churches that buy off on this dispensationalism. We're scientific now. We don't have demons involved, but there is. I've interviewed David Bryan, Pastor David Bryan. This is called The Serpent and the Savior. My goodness, you want to see where rubber meets the road. He didn't believe any of it. He was part of the dispensationalism crowd. It doesn't happen now. He was woefully unprepared to fight the Battle of Anton LaVey in Northern California. This is his story. I've interviewed him and talked to him on the phone many, many times. He was given, first of all, this primer book because a prophet, spiritual mentor came to him and says, I know you're going to be faced with this. Get up to this by reading Dr. Rebecca Brown's book, simply called He Came to Set the Captives Free. If you don't think this isn't a spiritual battle, you better read this. This is out there. This is, oh my goodness, a medical doctor now, showing again the links of pharmakia and why it's amazingly real. You could make movies about this, and it would be way out there. It's Twilight Zone.
Truth is stranger than fiction.
It is. It's amazing.
So here's the last question I want to bring. Because the whole reason we do this show is because, obviously we're concerned about what's happening across the world. We're concerned what's happening in D.C. We're very concerned about what's happening with Epstein. The fact that it is very clear that we live in a country that is being ruled by pedophiles who are torturing children and hurting them with zero accountability, and they're protecting each other. Meanwhile, if you go too fast down the road, they're going to lock you up. But our focus has been, because again, how much can we do in D.C.? But I believe we live in the area where we can make a difference. And I do believe that this is ground zero, and I do believe that there is a lot of darkness focused on here, but I believe there's a lot of light in this state and a lot of goodness and a lot of incredible people. And I believe that is where we can make a difference, in our backyard. And so knowing that the United Nations has such a strong presence here, and that we our lands, our water, our resources are being used by this organization for purposes that are not good for our children and humanity, this becomes kind of a touchy thing, because clearly we can call out our politicians and see they're involved. But this is a conversation I know people don't want to have, but I think it's important. A few years ago, Ezra Taft Benson called this organization satanic. He warned people about the United Nations. Today, the church seems to be very involved with the United Nations. Is that a concern to you? I want to know your thoughts. Lisa?
It would be foolish to not think so. Nothing happens in our state here without it kind of because we were founded by a religious organization. It'd be silly to think that they're not involved in the decision making there, considering this is the kind of the ethos of our state. I think that it's not to say, and I think that's where people go wrong. They start blaming large swaths of people. It's Israel, it's the Jews, all these different things. But in my research and what I found through the Fetzer Institute, which I just mentioned, they're the institute behind putting social emotional learning in schools. They've infiltrated all of the religions through the Parliament of Religions. And so that includes the LDS faith, that includes Baha'i, and Baha'i has a huge influence here in our state as well. That includes Christianity, the evangelicals. There has been infiltration in every single religion. So I think it'd be foolish to say that it doesn't also include the LDS faith.
True, what are your thoughts on that?
Most definitely. Well said, Lisa. It goes back again to my my radio shows and fleshing out stories like Pastor David Bryan and his sweet wife, and this story. What is amazing is what's not in this book about who is the White Brotherhood and who is Anton LaVey. Is he the Grand Poobah or is he just a lower lieutenant? And that's where it gets sobering, because it is worse than you can imagine. Jeffrey Epstein he's one of the high priests. He's not the guy. And you look at who's overarching, and I'll just say this. When we talk about Salt Lake being the epicenter, it's called the Crossroads of the West for a reason.
Actually, they just changed that. It's now the Crossroads of the world.
Yeah,
the
right.
world, the
The
epicenter.
world.
That is scary to the extreme because of what Anton LaVey shared with this whole thing is who his. And if you don't know who Anton LaVey is, do your own home. Read this book. This will sober you up real quickly.
I have something to say.
Yeah.
I do think that the United Nations is an extremely dark place. I've experienced through personal experience. And all I need to know about that is the fact that we're talking about like a praying class that will come in and suck the lifeblood of the earth, of our water, of our resources. They're doing that with children. And as a mother, I take personal issue with that. The formation, I brought children into this world painstakingly through tremendous sacrifice. I grew them in my womb for 40 weeks, and then I birthed them, and then I nursed them, and I gave them everything I have. My children are an inheritance of the Lord. And when I see another organization strategically planning and preparing and preying upon my children, I take issue with that, and that is satanic. So that's where I draw the line. I will say I am a fully participating member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And I've also had tremendous spiritual experiences with that faith in my life, in reading my scriptures, in participating in all of the ordinances and all of the things that have brought such fulfillment and personal strength to me in my life and how I defend my family and my children and the framework that I have and the strength that I have to go out and do these things. So I think that although there are things that I perhaps may not understand, I can sit in a little bit of tension and allow things to play out as they will and know full well where my roots are, where they are anchored in Jesus Christ of Nazareth, my Savior, my Redeemer. The United Nations talks all about saving the world. I know who my Savior is, and I'm going to teach that to my children. And I will say that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, as I know it, has given me that personal resilience and that strength. And that's where my roots are. And if there is anything untoward and anything unsavory happening within my faith, I want to stand and say, that is not in agreement. We do not treat children this way. We protect families, we protect mothers, we protect children. So that's where I am. And so I think that's where a lot of people are in this state, to be honest, because I think that we're waking up and we're saying, wait a second, this doesn't coincide with everything I've been taught. And I feel like Jesus Christ has given us a mind, sound mind, and we can reason for ourselves. And we are being asked to use the Spirit, or else we're not going to make it in these last days. That's what we're being taught. And so I think that it's up to us to educate ourselves. And if things don't quite match up, that's okay. You can sit in a little bit of tension. You can. That's what we're put on this earth to do. And it's super hard right now. It's super hard. Our minds, that cognitive dissonance is stretching us. But guess what? There's something really sacred in that stretching, because then you have nowhere else to go but to Jesus Christ. And that is a sacred opportunity that you have. We don't have to know all the answers. We don't have to point the fingers. Heaven knows I am praying for my church leaders every day. Because if there's some there that need to repent, give them the courage and the grace to do that. And if there's people there that are seeing what's happening, they need all the more prayers, because they're there amongst wolves, perhaps, right? Mm-hmm. We don't know who they are. I don't know. Is it my job? No, it's God's job. But it is my job to protect children, and that's where I need to be. And so that's where I stand.
I love it. I love it.
So, as again, not religious, but just an observation, because I grew up in the state, obviously, and my family's Mormon. I think there's a big difference between, for example, the gospel and what the gospel says and people believe versus the administrative state of the church. And so I would just say that maybe take a look at the administrative portion going on, because there are connections, and it can be obviously to help people have, for food, etc., things like that. But I think it's really hard to be tied to something like the UN or, Gates Foundation, etc., and not get sucked in a little bit. So that would be my 2 cents on that. And then I think the other thing that addresses what we were talking about earlier is for people, I think faith without works is dead. So yes, have faith, but you also have to put in the work in whatever way that, is for you. Like Jason said earlier, everybody's got a different calling, but I think you got to listen. I think you really have to start paying attention to yourself, to the voice inside, your intuition, and cut out the noise so that you can hear the intuition and listen to what you're being directed.
I love it.
Yeah.
True, do you want to finish?
Yes, to finish up with that, and thank you for all of that, the input. Here is kind of my viewpoint on it all. We can either focus on the kingdom versus the king himself. And I think if we focus on the king, the rest will take care of itself. I had interview with general authority when I was sorting this out, and I was accused of destroying or hurting the kingdom. And my response to the general authority was simply, I look at the king, and the king will tell me what to do with the kingdom. Why aren't you doing the same thing? And he didn't want to hear that. But that is really what this is all about. Is becoming oneness with Christ himself. Whether it's, there's nothing more sacred in the partnership than women when they birth a child. You become partner with Christ in the creation of that. And that's the beautiful thing about Jesus himself. So we focus on Christ, and don't become lukewarm or apathetic. This is the big problem in all Christian churches that claim this. The millennialism that comes in, we're going to be raptured up. We're not going to have to worry about it. I'm just not going to get involved. And that's dispensationalism. That's the evil has come in here. Because, again, Christ makes it very clear. If you're lukewarm, I'll spit you out of my mouth. I want you hot or cold. You've got to be involved in this fight right now. You can't just say, and I have beloved friends in the LDS faith who I love dearly, and their whole sense is I don't need to worry about it because I'll just trust the prophet. I'll just follow my leaders. And they ask, where's your relationship with Christ? He's the author of all truth. Well, I have trust in my leaders. I'll follow. And when I bring out these things about what's happening with the United Nations during the COVID era and all this, they look at me and says, I don't care if I go to hell or not. I'm following my leaders. That is dangerous in against freedom. Freedom to follow the truth is the Savior, Jesus Christ. That's what it's all about. He came to set the captives free.
Well, I just want to thank this incredible group of people. I know them all, and I will say I love these people. You know, these are incredible people, sincere. They've all spent, much of their lives serving God, following their light, striving to fight against corruption, evil, or darkness. And I'm thankful for all of you, and I appreciate your comments. These are just difficult times. I feel for all of you. We live in difficult times, and these are difficult waters to navigate. But as I think everyone here would agree, these are times that will force us. The only way we'll make it through these times is to have a personal relationship with our Savior and to learn to hear Him.
Amen.
And it's hard. This has been very hard on all of us. It's hard on my wife and I. It's a struggle to live in these dualities, the tension that we live under. But like Carolina said, for me, I have a responsibility to fight for children, to fight against the darkness. I was not sent to this earth to sit silent while darkness rages. And neither were you. Neither were any of us. And this is the great. We just live in biblical times. I think we can all see that. And I know we weren't sent here to sit on the sidelines and to just sit and watch or have our head in the sand. I believe, Michael is actively fighting against this dragon. I believe that the Savior is fighting, and he is exposing the darkness wherever it is. And as I said before, when it's all said and done, it will not matter how much money we made while we were here on this earth. It will not matter how good we looked or dressed or how much we could lift in the gym. What will matter is what did we do when we were here, when the battle was raging around us. And I will tell you, we are at war. We are coming into the climax of this battle. It is raging. Children are suffering. Look what's going on at Epstein. We are in the middle of this battle. And what hurts me is so many people who are blind to the fact that we are at war. They think that we're then. And to those of you who are standing and fighting, God bless you. And I know these are difficult things for all of us, regardless of our political party, regardless of our faith. These times are stretching us, and I believe they will get worse. But I do believe, like we said, God wins. God wins, and all that matters is what did we do with our time here in our station while we were on Earth. And so, anyways, thank you to our incredible listeners, you guys. We love you. We appreciate you. We appreciate the support you are. To the survivors, to me, nothing else matters. I'm glad to come and talk about the UN because I think it matters. I think it all ties in to what the overarching enemy, his plans are, and all these. But at the heart of it all, the heart of all the darkness, the enemy feeds on children. And while it's important to understand the UN, the important thing is the thing we will all be held accountable for is what did we do when we knew what was going on with Epstein, when we knew what was happening in our backyard. Did we stand, or did we say it was too much to carry and turn away? And I appreciate you guys for standing and fighting with Jehovah and Michael in this. So God bless you guys, and we'll see you on the next show.
Thank you for watching this episode of We Are the People. Me and my team are the ones behind the scenes doing all the editing and recording for We Are the People Utah. It's very important for us to make sure that you, the people, understand how much corruption lies within the state. All is not well in Zion. I'm also a licensed realtor here in the state of Utah, and I want to help more people achieve the American dream. So if you're looking to buy or sell or just have questions about real estate, please feel free to call me. I'd love to answer your questions. We love being a partner with We Are the People Utah, and we look for many more episodes to come. So please, if you're interested in buying or selling or just have any questions, feel free to reach out to me at 385-244-9417 or daniel@uvorealestate.com. Or you can find my Instagram at danielbrew_SLC. I look forward to helping you in your real estate journey and keep the fight moving forward. Thanks.